Okay, hi folks. This is my second go at filming this particular question because I don't know what happened. The other one's disappeared. So this is question 3 and it's all about film techniques. So what I'm doing is a little bit of manipulating you and I'm forcing you to look at certain images. And if you've never met me before, I'll tell you something about me and what's important. Of course, you already met me, so you have some preconceived ideas. Okay, so question 3 talks about skillful filmmakers and how they manipulate viewers along an expected path to create a specific response and those lump in the throat moments for the audience, for the viewer. Now, you're being asked to indicate how Gus Van Sant, so how Van Sant, the director, does this in Finding Forrester. And to do this, you need to think about the beginning shots that are used. You need to think about key events throughout the film and the ending. Now, that might seem like an awful lot, but you need to keep it simple. I know that's easy for me to say, isn't it? So you'd have a paragraph on beginning shots. You pick a couple of key events. You talk about the ending and how that creates the lump in the throat. So that's one. So you've got your introduction and your conclusion, and then you've got 1, 2, 3, 4 paragraphs outside of your introduction and conclusion. So probably about 6 paragraphs as an absolute minimum. Even though I'm talking about paragraphs, you need to think about your word count. So no less than 800 words, folks, on this one. Be aware of how many words you wrote for your crucible task, because if you've written over 1,000 for that, then you won't have as many words to play with. So that's your responsibility, although I will boss you around about that. Alrighty. Now remember, okay, so the beginning shots, that montage has been created by Van Sant to introduce us, to get these different shots, to introduce to us something about the world that Jamal lives in. Okay? Selected shots. Clearly there's no dragons in Jamal's world, but you know, there is in mine. Okay, so they're being used to introduce us. Now, key events are being used throughout the film to help us develop more of a relationship and empathy. Empathy means understanding, so empathy for the characters. We want life to go, we want things to go well for them. There are some lump in them, whilst you don't get many lump in the throat moments, there are some there throughout the film. So, for example, when Jamal takes Forrester to Madison Square Garden to the baseball game, and Forrester curls up in the fetal position because he's so scared. Hasn't been out of the apartment in years. That's a lump in the throat moment. But the purpose of that is to help us feel real empathy, real feeling for Forrester. The ending, of course, and then there are others as well, but the ending of the film, when Forrester comes to Jamal's school at Mala Callow and reads for Jamal, and we think, thank goodness he's come, you know, things are going to work out for Jamal now. But Forrester had to overcome his own issues to do that, so that's a real, we know that, we understand that, so that heightens that lump in the throat moment. And of course at the end, when we find out that Forrester has passed away. So you don't have that neat Hollywood ending where everyone lives happily ever after. It is a happy ending in a way because Forrest got to achieve his dream and Jamal is staying at Mata Callow, so he's going to be able to move out of the poverty, but it's bittersweet, okay? And that's what makes it such a lump in the throat. Alrighty, now you're being asked to talk about film techniques, and it's really a trick, something that can go wrong and get a bit tricky for people is they feel they have to talk about everything, and you don't have to. So you need to think about, let's just get some of this stuff off. Firstly, don't try to do too much. Pick an event or a person. Briefly identify it. I don't want, when you're picking an event or a saying or a quote someone makes, I don't want this massive, I don't want every single little detail in there because it gets overwhelming. Don't get too much is happening. What you need to do is you briefly describe. So you briefly describe what happened, or you briefly describe the person. Then most of your of your writing in the paragraph is on the how and the why. Whoops, I'm sorry, I'm writing through the camera. And the why it was important, how it created that lump in the throat moment, or how it helped us develop more of a feeling, empathy for the character. Okay? So once again, don't try and do too much, keep it simple. Now with those techniques, don't forget about symbols. Remember that good old eye, the window which is the eye on the world? That's a technique that is used by Van Sant to communicate Forrester's isolation, but how he still has this hunger that he wants to know what's happening. Also, with techniques, remember camera shots and angles, sound, diegetic and non-diegetic. How does sound add to that feel, the intensity, how does it increase the drama of a moment, or how does it show us that someone has, like Forrester has made a breakthrough? Remember that carousel music when he's riding his bike? Creates this sense of freedom. The birds flying, sense of freedom. Okay? So also mise-en-scène, which is all the elements in a particular shot that communicate something about the relationship or communicate what is happening. So mise-en-scène is used very effectively in the beginning scenes when we're getting to know the characters. It's used very effectively at the end when Forrester comes in to read at Malacallo. There's not a lot there's all these people sitting down very still and very uniform, and Forrester comes in and creates this change. Okay, in your study guide, there's lots of stuff for you about symbols. Okay, have a look through. There's lots of stuff for you. There's some stuff for you about mise-en-scène and sound. Look at your PowerPoint about film techniques. If you've lost that, go on to Edmodo. So you need to clearly, just in recapping, you need to clearly indicate how the producer of a text, which is Van Sant, manipulates the viewers to create a specific response by taking us along that particular path. So as viewers, we're forced to look at characters in a certain way. As viewers, we have no choice but to look at what Van Sant wants us to look at. Now also, something's gone on again. Just bear with me for a moment while I log back in and get this screen. Here we are. Oops, it's upside down. So you need to consider, why is it important for Van Sant to use a variety of techniques? Because one of the key techniques he uses, because what he's telling us is that relationships are important. This is what he's trying to communicate. Relationships are important for development. But why does he use a whole variety of techniques? When the most common technique he uses, or one of the most common techniques he uses, is that mid-shot, that close-up mid-shot of characters to show their response to each other, the whole idea of relationship. But he doesn't just use that, he uses, sound and mise-en-scène and symbols. By using a variety of film techniques, gives the film greater impact, which creates that lump in the throat moment. Okay. There'll be another video coming up on Thursday for you, just to remind you of a couple of key ideas, but that is it at the moment.